Hello and welcome to this week's Etch Play Weekly Live Show. I am joined today by Adam. Adam, how are we doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Yes, I'm very good. So, thanks to the marvel of modern technology, we are streaming today's show from a laptop in a van in a field in Cornwall. Yeah, it's hot, and my laptop may struggle a little bit, but we're all used to that with Benjay's efforts. Yeah, I also
Yeah.
can't really keep tabs on what we're doing, so you'll have to tell me if I'm doing anything wrong. Are we good with that?
Yeah, it sounds good to me. I mean, so far, I think the quality of the show from a field in Cornwall is better than our usual quality, so nothing to worry about just yet. Hopefully, it'll be a nice, smooth show full of great content.
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, as usual, we're going to be checking out the latest headlines from the wonderful world of the games industry this week. And then we are going to be switching it over to some pre-recorded video with Taya checking out Griftlands. And after that, Taya will be here herself, and her and I will be having a little tour of all the kind of considerations, tools, and technologies a growing games business might need. Yeah, does that sound good to you?
Sounds good to me.
Excellent. So, Adam, what's been going on in the world of games this week?
I'm your little investigative journalist this week. So, we've got a few news stories for you, as usual. Let's get into them. The first one is about Gamescom, which obviously is coming up very soon indeed. This first news story is that Sony have confirmed that they won't be showcasing anything at Gamescom in Germany this year, or as part of Gamescom's opening night live online stream. The PlayStation creators are joining a long list of notable absentees, which also includes Nintendo and Activision Blizzard. No reasons been given, but Gamescom's event is traditionally very well attended and attracts a large number of online viewers. It's often considered the biggest games expo outside the US, a sort of European version of E3. The absence of big names such as PlayStation and Nintendo is perhaps indicative of a broader shift in the industry that we've been talking about on the show for a while, away from these centralized events and towards companies, especially big companies, deciding to dedicate resources to making and hosting their own online streams, their own press events, all their own kind of stuff, where they have kind of more control over the message. Gamescom runs from August 24th to 28th. It will be the first time the show has run a physical event since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. Digital stuff, including the opening night live stream, is still expected to feature as well. So there'll be stuff for you at home. You have to go to Cologne to experience the joys of it. But yeah, Dan, what do you make of this? I mean, it's definitely like we say, part of a trend for these larger companies to maybe say we should do our own thing. We don't really need you anymore. Do you think this is a sign of more to come in terms of the way that events are handled and run in the industry?
Yeah, as you say, it definitely appears to be a bit of a trend. Gamescom's a funny one because it is a very industry-focused event as well as the consumer-focused aspect. And I know a lot of the industry are excited to get back out there and meet up. And yeah, so I guess from the industrial kind of deals and pitching and that side of things, maybe Sony's presence isn't going to have too big of an impact, although it will definitely be telling when the event happens to find out. But yeah, in terms of the consumer facing side of it, yeah, it's definitely a changing of the tides, as Ty and I discussed the other week, kind of how that impacts approaches to marketing and things like that. Is Yeah, it's all a changing landscape. Um, but I did enjoy the Summer Games Fest and all the activity around that, which was perhaps geared towards smaller studios, indies and double A's. Obviously, there was a big showing as well, so maybe there's making more room for the smaller voices to have a say.
Yeah, definitely one to keep an eye on. And obviously, E3 have promised to return next year. No one really believes them. We'll see if that ever pans out, but definitely be interesting to see how that progresses for the remainder of the summer and into next summer as well, as the industry gets back on its feet after COVID. Next up on the news story list, then we're talking about shortages. So if you work in games, or if you love games, you've probably noticed that for a while it's been incredibly hard to get graphics cards. The good news is graphics cards are starting to become readily available again. You can thank the cryptocurrency crash for that. The bad news is now, if you need a controller, such as an Xbox controller, Turns out that due to supply chain issues, Microsoft is struggling to supply enough wireless controllers to European countries, including the UK. Other affected countries are thought to include France, Netherlands, and Germany. Australia, which obviously isn't in Europe, is also thought to be currently experiencing supply problems for these must-have accessories. Microsoft have confirmed the shortage in a statement to VCG, but have yet to share any further details on why this is happening, or whether there's like a specific component or a specific issue that's causing this. A spokesperson referred to the matter as an example of supply disruption. So one to watch maybe there. And if you've got a gift-giving celebration coming up, like a birthday, and you want a controller, make sure you buy one sooner rather than later, because they might be slightly hard to find. Dan, do you even use a controller, Dan? Or you're a keyboard and mouse?
No, I definitely need a controller. I put my keyboard and mouse skills to bed many years ago, and they just will not come back. I need to act on this, because being in this van lifestyle, one of my plans is to get Xbox Bluetooth controller, so I can check out some of the cloud streaming stuff as well. Which obviously, you need a Bluetooth connected controller to make the best of that. So I guess I better get a move on with that.
Yeah, Xbox controllers are pretty cool. They're worth the money. They also announced last week as well. We didn't cover this because it wasn't as important as some of the game announcements, but they announced more options and features available in the design lab, so you can create your own custom funky controller, assuming you'd be able to buy it. So you can design your own special Dan Thomas controller, potentially, your own colours, your own little engraving on it.
Yeah, sounds like a good idea.
Our next news story then is about the Metaverse. Someone put £1 in the Metaverse swear jar.
Ding, ding,
so
ding.
companies like Meta, Epic Games, who create Fortnite, Nvidia, Microsoft, and many others are kind of starting to become a little bit more committed publicly to open standards for the Metaverse. It's via a group called the Metaverse Standards Forum, which aims to tackle the Metaverse in ways that are quite familiar to us, because we work in the web kind of industry primarily, or we have done a lot of web work in the past. So the way that web browsers work is there's this group, or several groups, I guess, that collaborate on ideas for the web and the way that browsers should work, and over time they get adopted. This is a similar sort of thing, but for the Metaverse. So the idea is they want to agree on the ways that the Metaverse should work, with the idea being that it'll be easier for people to create for the Metaverse, to create things that are portable between different parts of the Metaverse, sharing assets, sharing behaviors, sharing control methods, all those sorts of things will be on the table and up for discussion. So the idea is that they're going to be, like I say, created and evolved collaboratively over time with input from a number of businesses which are involved in this forum. And I think it's a step in the right direction, personally. I mean, to try and attempt to agree on some kind of standards. We've talked on the show about the Metaverse before, and one of the big concerns, I know Ben Joyce talked about this as well, the idea that there needs to really be one Metaverse and not hundreds of different Metaverses that don't really interact at all, doesn't really live up to the promise of what the Metaverse is supposed to be. So hopefully this is a step in the right direction as far as that is concerned. But it's not yet really clear whether this forum will produce any meaningful action on Metaverse creation, particularly in the next few years. This could be a very, very long-term project indeed. Some commentators have also criticised that the forum is led by major businesses and perhaps not as welcoming to independent creators, many of whom are out there right now creating interesting technology and concepts for metaverses and metaverse areas. So maybe there's opportunity there to be a little bit more open in the future as well. What do you make of this, Dan?
Yeah, I think something like this is necessary. As you say, we've kind of got a long history in the web, and the web certainly wouldn't be what it is today if it weren't for the W3C. And you do have your Googles, your Apples, your Facebooks, all kind of a part of this consortium of people working towards a shared set of standards. And it's not all plain sailing, but I'd say to a large extent it's worked, and it's given us a single, consistent, ubiquitous platform, and everybody's singing from the same hymn sheet, as it were. And I think a lot of the promises of the Metaverse and Web3 and everything else relies on that kind of seamless interchange between experiences, and you're just not going to get that with it being wholly owned by a single enterprise. So yeah, but I do take on board as well kind of the smaller voices needing to have a say, which I do think this this forum should be open to. But it does also, I guess, there's a bit of reassurance with the fact that the larger enterprises who do have experience in this kind of environment and do have the kind of the weight and track record to make this work, rather than maybe just the gold rush kind of VC backed, maybe should we say less authentic or less in the spirit of what this could be motivated people kind of steering it and influencing it. So yeah, no, I think it's a good thing, but like you say, it's going to take a while for this to pan out as to its final form.
Yeah. A couple of bits of housekeeping from me as well. If you like the news, if you like us hearing us talk about news on the show, you should be aware that if you go to etchuk.com/play, especially on Fridays, you'll find a whole host of news curated by the team here at Etch, including myself, including Dan, including other show guests such as Taya and Ben Joy. So there'll be one tomorrow. If you are interested in that, make sure you go to the website tomorrow and read basically a roundup of all the latest things going on in the industry, which is always very insightful and helpful. And lastly, this is a bit of an odd one, a bit of a curveball. If you want to see us in person, you will be able to during the month of July, specifically the Develop Conference in Brighton. We're going to be there from the 12th to the 14th. If you'd like to meet up with any of us, you're welcome to get in touch on Twitter or via LinkedIn or any of the methods that you would usually find us. Myself, Ben, Taya, and Dan are all going. And we're also hoping to throw a little luncheon on the first day, have some falafel potentially. I'll put a link in the chat shortly. Technically, the tickets are all gone right now, but we don't really know how many we can really take. So we're going to have the wait list open. If you're interested, please sign up because it will help us figure out numbers and get as many people involved as possible. And yeah, that's just an unusual opportunity for you. You have to just watch us on the screen. You can come actually say hello to us.
See us in real life, outside of these little green boxes.
Us, hug us, slap us, you do whatever you want.
That's yeah. A quick question, Adam. I've seen this is the Falafel and Friends luncheon. Yep. Is lunch just a shortened version of luncheon, or are they different words?
I believe they are. Luncheon is kind of like a fancy. I think it implies a level of formality that we're not really adopting. So I think a luncheon is traditionally a formal lunch, whereas this is a very casual lunch, and we just liked the way that it sounded. So yeah, I think it's maybe it's slightly old-timey, a little bit old English, not really in favour anymore, but we liked it from a branding perspective. We've gone for it. SEO. If you search for luncheon, will be the top result. But I doubt it.
Develop luncheon by Etch Play.
Yeah, for Develop luncheon, we might be top.
Very good. Well, I'm looking forward to that. And yeah, hello to Steve in the chat. He's going to be at Develop, and I'm sure as a fellow plant eater, he'll be down for some falafel and friends. Yeah, very exciting. Is that all of the exciting announcements you've got, Adam?
That's all. Unless you want to talk about anything else, you got any thoughts?
I just Taya's got an interesting contribution to the conversation there. Falafel. So yeah, let's end on that, and we'll hand over to pre-recorded Taya checking out some games, and I'll be back with real life Taya for a discussion about the platforms that growing games businesses should be considering. Thank you very much, Adam. See you soon.
See you soon.
I am Taya here at Etch Play, and I am going to play some Griftlands for you today, which I'm super excited about. So I played this game when it was back in early access, and I had a really great time, but I didn't get very far. Can't remember really why. I think I got distracted probably by another game. But since this has come out and it's been very popular, I thought it'd be nice to play this for our channel, for our weekly show and our YouTube. So this is Griftlands. It is made by Clay, or Cly, not really sure how to say it. And it's a really interesting deck builder, which we will go straight into. So I quite like Sal, so let's play with Sal. And I am going to get the normal one, I guess. And the really cool thing that the game has, which I really enjoyed when I was playing in early access, is it has a battle deck and a negotiation deck. So you have a choice with how you want to approach different situations. You don't always have to fight through them. Sometimes you can just negotiate or charm people or lie to people to get your way. I think these little things weren't there when I played it last, which is really exciting. So let's have a look at Sal's deck. So she has Composure, which is good. She's got a couple of low-level attacks, a few better ones, and then a few kind of buffs for her negotiation deck, which is very exciting. And then Battle, we've got some stabs, we've got some elbow strikes, Fighting Dirty to improvise a card, which is really exciting, and a couple of defense cards as well, which suits me just fine. So let's get into it. Recent battle. The bodies are still fresh, so I can grab something. So I can get a Vial of Slurry, which is a card that gives me an action that gets destroyed after 3 uses. A Lumen Grenade, which hits all enemies and does a decent amount of damage, but it does get destroyed after 1 use. Or I can get a Battlecraft, which gives me first attack, each battle deals an extra 4 bleed. Oh, I do love bleed. That. I'm going to put that in my head, apparently. So now you can see here my Battlecraft is going to do extra bleed. And when I first played her, Sal, I really did like my bleed build. So this will actually go very well if I can get some more bleed on her. Oh, hello, there's a pack. Hello, pack. Let's fight. Oh, nice. We're going to self-defend against a wild-horned Yoti and just normal wild Yoti. Oh, ooh. You are 2.5 stars. I don't know if that's good or not. Let's see. Lovely. So, very similar. I can see that you want to do 5 damage, you want to do 3 damage, and then a status effect of 5 is also going to get applied. But I've got some bleed stuff, which is great, and I've got some defense. So let's apply defense. That will protect me from this attack here. I'm going to do another defense, and that should cover both attacks. And then I'm going to do a nice little stab to, I guess it doesn't matter, to you. Lovely, and you've got some bleed on you now. Oh no! Am I also bleeding? I don't know, there's a lot of damage there. I don't know if I'm going to be able to feed these people. Okay, well let's put some defense on. And let's do a nice stab. And another nice stab. Ooh, this might not end well for me. Sal's daggers. Yes, that's a really good one. At the end of your turn, take 2 damage, and they say, oh man, I am bleeding. That's going to do me damage. Right, let's do defense. And let's do Sal's daggers. So I want to do bleed. Yeah. Right, you can bleed now. And you get the rest of the attack. And that's gonna... Oh, it applies bleed to them. Does it? No, it gives me 2 damage. Okay. Defend. Very close to defeating you. Let's defend a bit more. I don't want to die just yet. Oh, nearly there. We're done. You've exposed me. Oh no. This feels like it might go a bit terrible. Let's protect. Let's see what card we can improvise. Bleed. Yes. More bleed on you. And then we're going to give you a nice little stab. Okay, we're down to 1. And technically I do have more hit points than he does. So I guess we'll see how we get on. Oh yeah, South daggers every time. Do I have any combos? I don't think I do, so let's just go straight for the beat. I'm gonna do defense. Oh, I don't know what he's gonna do to me. A nice little stab. So you've got a little bit of defense now, which isn't good. I'm fatigued, which means I'm not getting it. That doesn't really matter. That's just my cards. Okay. Okay. Right. We need to do this carefully. Let's see what we can gain from there. I can gain 2 combo, apply and impair. That sounds good. There you go. Now you're impaired. So he won't be doing as much damage to me. Great. We like to hear that. And then we're going to do a nice little stab. Lovely. You're attacking for quite a bit. Okay, let's defend. Let's stab. And let's elbow strike. Because I think as long as we get to the white bit, yes, he runs away. Victory.
And we are back from pre-recorded Taya to live Taya. Taya, how are we doing?
We are doing great. How are you, Dan?
Yes, I'm very good. Welcome to the mobile Etch Play studio. So, Griftlands, you're a fan?
Yeah, really big fan. I really definitely need to go back to it and finish Sal's story and go to Rook's story. And there's also a 3rd character, which I've never even tried. So yeah, lots of opportunity there for me. Definitely recommend for anyone who likes deck builders or roguelikes with some fun animations and combat.
Nice. Yeah, I did like the animation. Seemed very slick. It was quite yeah. It looked good. So, Taya, obviously, I'm kind of marveling at the fact that we're able to run a live stream from a field in the middle of nowhere, and it's kind of pondering like how far we've come with the kind of the technology landscape and the tools and the software at our at our disposal, and how this has kind of like evolved along with our growth and how any games business grows, and so do the operational requirements. And in the last few years, there's been a boom of what we call SaaS, or software as a service platforms, which I think to some, particularly perhaps games businesses or game studios or any kind of startup business, it's gone from an exciting era of innovation to what perhaps might now be sort of somewhat cripplingly overwhelming with the amount of options and choices and software and processes and best practices. And add on top of that, our favourite topic of the past couple of years, a global pandemic, which has led to more remote work and a candidate-driven market that we've got in the games industry and tech in general at the moment is kind of driving more of this flexible working, which I'm demonstrating here. So the business or the office setup of today is dramatically a different place from what it was a few years ago. And and as a growing and evolving business ourselves, we've got quite a privileged position that we get to see both not only our own evolution, and I've been fortunate to kind of run a business in some form or another for the past 20 years, but we also get insight into our clients and all these different games organizations of all shapes and sizes. So I thought it'd be interesting to maybe just have a chat through some of the tools and technologies and approaches being used to scale a modern games business. Does that sound fun to you?
Yes, because I'm a massive nerd and I love platforms, as Dan very well knows.
Yes, I knew you'd be the one to have this chat with, and yeah, for the context when you're watching, Taya has probably one of the most impressive abilities I've seen to just dive in with a new technology and just click every button, find every drop down, break everything that can be broken, but really understand these kind of new ways of working really quickly, which is a real it's a real thrill for me to see somebody do that. Often people can be very nervous and hesitant about adopting new platforms, so it's great to see that you're so embracing of them. So yeah, with such an exciting landscape of conversation, I thought we'd start with the most thrilling place of all, which is accounting software. And that's kind of, I guess, was well, I won't spend long on it because it isn't thrilling at all, but it is one that's kind of, when I think back to when I very first started my first business back in the early 2000s, you pretty much had QuickBooks and Sage were kind of like the two bits of software, and they were software in the traditional sense in that you would get them on CDs or floppy disks before that, and you would install them, and then there'd be a new version released every year, and you'd buy the new version. And it was pretty much dictated by your accountant, and these were super unfriendly bits of software. They were really large and clunky, and you had to have a degree in accounting to even be able to use them. So quite often you just leave it to your accountant. And then over the years, kind of this web thing has taken off, and this idea of platforms and software as a service. And now there's just loads of options. We one of the first ones we adopted was a platform called Free Agent, which was optimized towards kind of like very small businesses, and that suddenly that was just transformational. It was so much easier. It had pretty charts. It actually used human language, yeah, that was a real big milestone. So and that's still available today. Very much, I'd recommend it for any sort of startup, small businesses or contractors. Well worth a look. We at Etch now use Xero, which again is a fairly modern web-based accounting platform. It's got lots of integrations, lots of automation, lots of reporting, so it's really powerful in that regard. And then the landscape is vast. There's FreshBooks, and when you get up to kind of enterprise scale, you might be looking at SAP and kind of these enterprise level platforms. So loads and loads of opportunities. But that's accounting. Yeah, I don't know if you ever had to have any dealings with accounting software in your career so far?
Not so much, but to be honest, I think the only one I've ever used is Zero, because at my previous jobs and our current setup is Zero, and I've always very much enjoyed using it. It's very user friendly. It makes sense to someone like me who's not familiar with accounting or potentially numbers. And yeah, it just seems very good. And I like that they have a phone app so that I can do my expenses and look at my account on the go, especially like, if we're going into London for meetings and things like that, you can just take a screenshot or whatever and go ahead with it, which I think is really good for the usability.
A really good point, and yeah, you kind of take you out there to the days before apps and convenient digital expense tracking, and just I used to walk around with just my wallet just full of receipts because at some point they would have to go into a shoebox or whatever, and that receipt paper, by the time you got around to looking at them, they'd all faded. And now, like I say, you can just snap a photo of it on your phone, throw the receipt away, or not even have a receipt. You get a digital acknowledgement. We live in wonderful times. So maybe something a little bit more pertinent, but I thought I'd cover that for anybody who is sort of starting their own business or wanting to get the lay of the land of it, because it is a critical part of any business, is your accounting software. Perhaps a little bit more fun is development, and again, that's another thing. Like making games or making any software, there's just been so much evolution of that, and again, I just think back to. I mean, I certainly wasn't there at the beginning, but the rate of change and how making a game, let's say 20 years ago, you would have like pretty much hand rolling everything, coding in C, which is a very it's still used today, but you don't get a lot for you have to do everything yourself. And then you fast forward today, and we've got platforms like Unity and Unreal, Just these huge, all-encompassing game engines that have got some incredible physics engines, lighting setups, animation, automations, and rigging. It's just a phenomenal place to be. So that's I guess a very, very light touch. Thinking about kind of development, it's interesting to think where we're going to end up. We touched in the news on kind of like this concept of the metaverse, how we're getting towards that, and you're seeing more tools now where you kind of what we call low code, no code. So you actually don't need to write code to be able to create experiences, and that's being demonstrated even within kind of metaverse-like games and experiences like Roblox, like Minecraft. Fortnite now has Fortnite Creative Mode, so you're actually creating whole games within games and ecosystems and economies within these things, and the whole metaverse promise, that might be an interesting. You can be in an experience creating another experience. So kind of looking forwards is an interesting exercise, I guess. Have you ever dabbled with any game creation tools, be that text adventures or coding or anything like that?
Not too much. I've been quite interested in RPG Maker, because that was like the thing. I was like, wow, all these games that are being made with this really interesting tool. As I understand it, not as much coding as you would need from like another standpoint. But to be honest, making games is hard.
Yeah, would you believe it?
And I've just not found the time. But it's definitely something on my kind of something that I want to do at some time in my life, is just make a little game. Like, it doesn't have to be popular or a success or anything like that, but just being able to say like, hey, I've made this little visual novel or whatever, can be quite fun and a good creative endeavor, right?
Absolutely, and again, that the whole kind of like distribution piece. Whereas, as I was mentioning before, CDs, like it was a real big job to publish in the traditional sense and actually physically produce a game. And obviously, once you printed, once you went gold and you were on disc or cartridge or whatever medium that you were distributing it on, that was it. Like, you didn't have day one updates and things like that. So that's another really interesting evolution of the technology and tools. And with these kind of self-made creations or experimental, the democratization of game development. You've got places like Etch where anybody can just create a little experience and share it, and with the added benefit of community and the internet, there you will find an audience for the most weirdest mashups that you can think of. Not that would be where you would end up, I'm sure.
You never know.
No, absolutely. So I guess hand in hand with game creation or digital product creation is source control. That's another thing that's changed dramatically over the years, from remembering to make sure you hit Control S and save your work, to complicated backup systems, to what were kind of the early days of source control, which is kind of a safeguarding and a way of storing the changes to your project as you go. There was, I think, kind of some of the early technologies there, CVS and SVN. SVN was certainly one of the ones that I picked up on, and is still used quite a lot today. And what that basically meant was that if you and I were working on a project together, you could have a copy of the source code, and I could have a copy of the source code, and then we can centralize our changes to a remote server of some sort. So again, the evolution of the internet and sort of server availability really helped that. And today we have Git and GitHub. SVN, not a fan of SVN in the chat there. So Git and GitHub and this idea of open source. So again, this whole democratization thing is now not only can we work on our code, we can share it and we can all benefit, and we can start from further on than we would have done pre the world of open and shared code, which is a really good thing. But a consistent trend when I was thinking about these things is actually, for me, and when I started, and perhaps the privilege of older developers, is that all of these things were introduced bit by bit, one by one. A couple of years would go by, and here's a new thing. We're all doing source control now. Okay, let's figure this out. When I talked to Mehdi, who was on the pre-recorded segment last week that Ben didn't totally cut off early.
And messed up.
No, yeah, basically, he's our developer intern, and I just look at all the landscape that he's got to learn and digest and try and get up to speed on. I just think, oh God, some of us had 15, 20 years drip fed all of these incremental changes, and if you're starting today, it's just a monumental amount of work to have to digest and understand. So yeah, fair play to anybody who's embarking on their developer journey today, and you have my full respect. Moving on, it's perhaps something that's a little bit more in your area of expertise, kind of ops and project management tooling. There are loads and loads of tools to help you manage your projects and deliver your projects and organize your projects. We're big fans of Trello, which we've used extensively historically. I've used numerous project management tools, from Jira to I'm trying to remember there's loads, and I know you've had experience with some, and I know you work with Trello. We've recently adopted a tool called Productive. You've got experience with Acello. You use Monday.com. What's your view of this landscape?
I think it's very interesting because project management as a whole hasn't particularly changed drastically over the last, 10, 20 years. But apart from kind of the agile methodologies and all the really cool stuff that's going on, but the way to do projects definitely has. And what I think a lot of people think about when they think about project management, they just think spreadsheets, right? They think 100,000 spreadsheets, and each one you have to go into and update and change. And in my entire career as someone who runs projects, thankfully, I've never had to use too many spreadsheets because my brain just doesn't work that way. And I'm very lucky that I've been able to use lots of these different platforms, which make just tracking and checking in on things so much easier without having to do any kind of fancy calculations or having to learn any new methodologies. All of these platforms like Monday, like the one that we have, Productive. I know there's also things like Asana, lots of things out there. They're all about user experience, and they're all about making things as simple and as usable as possible. To make sure that people are using them properly, tracking their time, etc. And it's just so great for me to be able to, as the producer on our team, go into one of these platforms and just see everything that my team is working on, the time they're spending, all of our budgets, everything in one place without having to check 500 spreadsheets, which we were doing up until recently a little bit with Smartsheets, which also is a much better spreadsheet in my opinion, much more usable than many others.
Yeah, very good. And I guess, as I said at the start of this segment, it can be perhaps a bit overwhelming, the amount of options and what should I use and what's the right tool. And I think we perhaps often put a lot of, maybe too much importance on picking the right tool. And as you said, these tools are all learning from each other. They're competing with each other, or they're solving different problems. Often I think you're just better off making a decision quickly and diving in and getting the value from it. You can always change later on. But I've certainly fallen foul of this. It can be very paralyzing to just choose, I've got to get this decision right. But they're all very good, and they've all got their quirks and they've all got their drawbacks. But ultimately, they're going to get you further, faster than, like you said, a swathe of spreadsheets. Yeah, which I've certainly fallen foul to in the past, and I do love a good spreadsheet, but there's definitely more than likely a more suitable tool for whatever job that it's good for.
Yeah, and the key thing, like you say, is there's never going to be a perfect platform for any of these things, but the key thing is just to find what is going to work best for you, and sometimes it's about making it work for you as well. The great thing about some of these platforms is, for example, Acello, something that I used to use at a previous job, it just is so much more complicated than Monday and Asana, and it has so many different options. Like where you are at your stage of growth, you might not need all those options, so you don't even need to have a think about all the enterprise levels and things like that, just start really simple, figure out what your processes are, and then have a look and see how that fits in within your working day. Because even, there's never going to be the perfect solution, but even if you get every year, you get a little bit closer to exactly what you're looking for, and you see some updates to some of them that might be more relevant to you, and you try different ones. Generally, I would say most of them are quite easy to learn because that's how they're designed, and they're quite similar in many ways. So kind of the investment that you put in at the beginning learning these systems can be a lot of really good, then the benefits that you get out of it. And we've seen that with our recent rollout at Etch with Productive. We've put some time into the investment of it, investigating exactly what we need, and we're about 2 months into it now, and it's working great.
Yeah, definitely as helping. For us, we're kind of at the point of our growth journey where we want to start to consolidate data and have as centralized a view of how we're operating as a business, and that just gets really complicated when you've got some of your data in one place, some of your data in a spreadsheet, some of your data in some Trello cards. And yeah, so I guess we're sort of going through that leveling up phase at the moment of looking at more all-encompassing systems which Productive offers us. And yeah, so far it's been great. And like you said, just the user experience and the attention to detail of these platforms is just getting better and better. When I started off with the show talking about accounting software, like these grey boxes with just hundreds and hundreds of fields all on the screen, they were absolutely impenetrable. Whereas modern web-based software is so much more user-friendly. It's an interesting topic, I think, from my perspective, as a service-based business or a B2B business. CRM is an important subject to us. We want to keep track of who we're dealing with, what conversations we're having with whom, and so we use CRMs such as HubSpot, or historically I've used things such as Pipedrive. Is quite a sales-focused, similar kind of concept. And then there's another angle of CRM, which is more in sort of email campaigns and mailing lists. So this is about communicating, more of a marketing slant on CRM, keeping in touch, and what's our read rates and things like that. But then within games as well, there's another layer. So we've got like B2B, we've got kind of newsletter, kind of almost like broadcast audiences. And then with games, you've got the player profiles, which I find a really fascinating topic, and something that's I think we're still fairly early on in. I'd say like mobile games perhaps got a much better grip on this at the moment than perhaps PC and console, although there's still significant technology and evolution out there. But this is the idea that your identity, your player identity, you've got your Steam ID or your Microsoft account, and then you're engaging with, say, I don't know, you might have a Rockstar account or an Ubisoft account, and you as a player are the customer, in the CRM, customer relationship management, and the perhaps more advanced games company setups are starting to look at the data that they've got from these player behaviors. Which games does this player like, and what are the properties of this player that might indicate to us which other games they would like or which features they would like in the games. But it's still fairly early days in terms of the systemization or the platform for this kind of thing. So you've got tools like Azure's PlayFab, and Amazon Game Sparks is the equivalent on AWS. And yeah, these are sort of still fairly early days. Axelbyte is another one. I think there's a lot of opportunity here, but I was doing some research earlier and kind of thinking like, what is the CRM tool of choice for games companies? And yeah, there's a lot of proprietary or inbuilt. But yeah, I think this is an area that's got a lot of opportunity for people to investigate, and it is worth keeping tabs on the PlayFabs, the GameSparks, the Axelbytes, and anything else like that. Because again, the whole idea with a software as a service type thing, it's a monthly subscription or a web-based tooling, so you don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel yourself all the time. So if they've got 80% of what you need, grab it, use it. It will always, like devs and I'm formerly of that mold. We love to solve problems ourselves. There's a whole "not invented here" mentality. So, if I didn't create it, it's not good enough. But I'd really encourage people to challenge that and get the benefit from others. And any thoughts on kind of this whole CRM or player profile platforms?
To be honest, much more than that you said, I'm personally not very familiar with the player side of things, but I also find it fascinating because obviously as a gamer myself, I find it quite interesting how these things operate. And, what I quite like the sound of is some stuff that I've seen recently, which I can't remember the name of, is something that has been happening a bit more is people have been creating software and platforms for players to collate all their different kind of game person, what do you call it? Profiles, I guess. So you can have one place where you have your Steam and your Epic Games and your Games Pass and your Ubisoft and your Activision, etc. Because that's one thing I would say as a player can be a bit frustrating, as having to have a very separate profile for every single thing that you want to do, and then not having all your games in one place, etc. But that's just how it's always been, and I think it's very interesting that people have identified this as a frustration and are trying to solve it in some way. I don't know if it works or how it works, or whether it's something that will carry on, but definitely keeping my eye out on it.
Yeah, it is and it's also a little bit prickly because obviously we are all more and more aware of kind of data sensitivities and owning our data and keep our data being abused, and the whole cookie policies and things like that. So yeah, it is one that has to be approached with a lot of consideration. But yeah, I think the opportunity both for games company insights from these kind of bringing these profiles together, and then also the potential benefits to players by recognizing your progress and progression and commitment to a publisher or a platform, and even the whole cross-play thing as well. Oh brilliant, this game's released on Switch. It's like, oh, I'd really love to have my progress so I can take this on the road and things like that. And it's great to see those kinds of things coming on leaps and bounds. There we go. I think that's a good place to round up. We've got some comments in the chat, and this is from Adam. I genuinely bail on most games that try to force me through some publisher account system sign up. There's thousands of games I could play that won't waste my time and get me straight into the fun. And I think that's a really important consideration, like player onboarding experience. I'm not quite as anti it as Adam, but I definitely think you shouldn't introduce it as friction. But for me, like when I'm playing, I love things like photo mode. And if I can have an account, which means that when I'm on my phone, I can more easily share some of the screenshots I've taken or share any of my progress via another, an app or a web page or something like that. I'm happy to sign up for that thing to get that benefit. But to make it a prerequisite or an actual blocker to getting into the fun, I think there are better ways to do it.
It reminds me of the age-old, you have to be online to play this game when it's not an online game, which is, I know why it's happening, and I don't understand enough about games to be able to say they shouldn't do that. But it definitely is a barrier sometimes, I feel, where it's okay, well, I don't have internet, I can't play my stupid single-player game that isn't even multiplayer.
Yeah, no,
I think there's a lot of feelings about that issue in the industry, similarly to having to sign up to a Ubisoft account just to play some Assassin's Creed, etc.
Definitely what we would call black hat technique. So you want to be offering these things as an enhancement to the player experience, but the allure of getting this data and getting this insight drives companies to put the player experience second and the needs of the business first. And I think that's when you're in dangerous territory. You want to motivate and incentivize the player to do it, not force them to, because it demonstrates you risk losing. Next player up has said, it would be great if these games could, at minimum, slow gameplay offline. If I can't bring my offline character to online play, that's okay. Yeah, it's an interesting point. But yeah, as you were saying, kind of if I just want allow, not slow, yeah. If it's a single player experience, or even some of the open world multiplayer experiences, sometimes you just want to explore or maybe do some grinding or farming or whatever it is. Yeah, I think forcing online can be a backward step in some instances.
Sure.
Excellent. Well, Taya, thank you for listening to me have a little stroll down memory lane and explore this landscape. Hopefully there's some useful and interesting bits in there for people watching. If you enjoyed this show, or if you didn't enjoy this show and would like to see somebody better next week, you should hit the follow. If you're watching on YouTube, then subscribe, and you can find us on all your usual social media platforms. Just search for Etch Play. And yeah, Taya, thank you for joining me, and we
Thank you for having me.
see you all next week.
Have a good one. How old do you feel after that segment?
I feel old all of the time.